It's Cliff Gallup time.
First things first, chord progression. In the intro and ending, there is actually no chord progression. It's all G major, just G major. Then what about verses and refrains? The verse goes like this. G, 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 A, A, D. G, 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 A, A, D. G, 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 C, C, C. G, 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 D, 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 G. This D, 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 G, of course, happens implicitly. You don't play it. And then the refrain. C, 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 C. G, 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 G. C, 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 C. G, 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 D, 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 G. And again, you don't play that last D, D, G. And finally, in the solos, it's all the same as in verses, just without refrains. Okay, it can be broken down into 4 licks, or 5 if the last one counts. Lick number 1. Look at my right hand. My rule here is first use fingers for everything on first string, and then use fingers for everything that looks like arpeggios. Now lick number 2, using the same rules for the right hand. Then lick number 3. Here it looks like on C chord, Cliff Gallup wanted to play an arpeggio, but accidentally picked 4th string twice. And I think I know why it happened. Using thumb pick, I have no issues to play an arpeggio, but as you might remember, Cliff was using flat picks, and with a flat pick, unless you're ready to use the pinky, you get kind of short of one finger. And then lick number 4. You might also want to try the same without open strings, so there is no ringing. And finally lick number 5. I'll start it from the previous one, so it's clear where it belongs to. And that's it. Now the whole solo, start to end. One interesting fact, do you remember Galloping Man, a song by the Blue Cats? One of the solos there is almost an exact copy of what we have just learned. Oh yeah, and now it's Merle Travis picking time. It's definitely the most overlooked part of Cliff Gallup's style. Pretty much no one plays Cliff Gallup's Travis picking solos using Travis picking. And that's probably because guitar's bass notes on the original recordings are hidden in the mix. So I believe many people just don't hear them. In fact, Bop Street is the song where you can hear those notes best. For whatever reason, the band's mix in Bop Street sounds just a bit differently. But still, if you listen also to other songs like Blue Jean Bop or Red Blue Jeans and a Ponytail, if you listen those using the right speakers or headphones, you might be able to hear something like this. So I'm palm muting aggressively, and the notes themselves are not really heard, but you can hear the delay pedal scales. And that's also what you can hear in those Gene Vincent songs if you have some luck with your playback device. There's yet one more thing. Those early live recordings when Cliff Gallup was still playing with the Blue Caps, you can find some of them even here on YouTube, and on those recordings Cliff's bass notes are way more pronounced. If we compare all the different recordings, different sounds, assuming also Cliff Gallup's picking method didn't change much between sessions, it will give us some ideas about chords and bass lines Cliff played in this or that situation. Now, after a longer talk, let's dive into it. I assume you're familiar with Travis picking, otherwise I've got another vid here at the channel about the basics, so please check it out. In a nutshell, Travis picking is all about adding notes to chord shapes. I'll play the beginning of the solo and then try to explain what's going on there. So, in the left hand we have this shape, G7, and we're adding these two notes to it. Then we move it 2 frets up so it becomes A7, this time with no extra notes. And in the end of the first line it comes to D, so the shape here is actually D7, but I cut a corner and simplify it a bit. I throw the note on the 3rd string away and just mute the string with the middle finger. Now, right hand. First, the bass part. It's really simple. Now let's add a melody. On G we have it like this. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then, sorry, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. So all together from the start. Then the next 2 bars. Here we have a different chord for G, a very familiar one, plus an extra note on the open E string. For A and D, the chords stay the same, A and D. And rhythmically is the same too, but the bass is different. Now, together with the high notes. Here on G, here we have a bit too much open strings, and you don't want them ringing. So it really needs to mute a lot. Think staccato, very percussive. As you have probably noticed, I'm not just palm muting, I also help it with my right hand. Okay, now the 3rd line. The first part probably doesn't need explanations. When moving to C, the chord shape is this. If you want me to give it a proper name, it's C7 suspended 2 with G in the bass. Wow! But in reality it is just C7, but without the pinky. and we'll use pinky to play this note. The bass line here is a bit odd. Now, together with the melody, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. So the third line once again, and I will play it all the way to the end. So the last one is. Well, congrats! You have probably learned your first Cliff Gallup's finger picking solo. Altogether, it sounds like this. The song has 3 verses. I'll start with second because I believe it's the accompaniment part. First verse is a variation of second that most likely came out as a mistake, a nice interesting mistake though. And in third verse, guitar parts are barely heard, so I guess it's the same as second. So let's go. This first line goes along chord shapes, first G major, then E major, with a leading tone, and D7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. And then there is exactly the same lick as in the first solo. Then it goes from G to C and back. Yes, here it is, the conventional C major shape. 1, 2, 3, 4, and. So, in overall, the verse goes like this. Cats and kittens off for Bop Street. Okay, then there is also the refrain. What Cliff Gallup plays in the refrain is actually Charleston. As we know, he liked dancing rhythms of the past. Charleston, Charleston. And then there's a lick of higher intensity. Once again. And then. So it's again that Charleston rhythm. Charleston. Cats and kittens off for Bop Street. So the whole refrain goes like this. Cats and kittens off for Bop Street. How are the cats and kittens off for Bop Street? said, the first verse looks like a variation of the second and pretty much like a mistake. It sounds kind of way too interesting for something that was played intentionally. So let's have a look. It starts with the transition from the intro. How are the cats and kittens of old Bop Street? So it's just the same as in all other verses. But then it gets a bit interesting. The beginning of the next line, 1, 2, 3, 4. It sounds almost like this. But you will have to syncopate the slide. And then it goes totally offbeat. 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's like 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. So the whole line. The next one also starts with a syncopated note. Going to C and back to G. So now the whole verse, and I will play the refrain too. The refrain is exactly the same as everywhere else. How are the cats and kittens of old Bop Street? Oh, for old Bop Street. And kittens of old Bop Street.
Now we have something not related to guitar playing per se, and that's why I've got a cajon here instead of guitar. The question is, how do we manage those tempo changes? I mean, from the intro to the fast part and then slowing down at the ending. The thing is, both intro and ending are 37 beats per minute. And just to remind you, I keep my metronome on 2 and 4, so when I say 37, I mean actually half notes. So both intro and ending are precisely 37 beats per minute, while the rest of the song is 93. And that kind of precision makes me thinking the song was recorded at least 2 different takes. So first they recorded both intro and ending, then the rest of the song, and finally the sound engineer just glued pieces of tape together. Otherwise it would be probably hard to explain how did they manage to get back to exactly the same tempo after playing 3 verses and 2 solos. Still, you probably might want to play this song live with a band, not relying on any kind of post-production magic. There is always an option just to give up that precision and to keep it simple. But still, if you want to make it kind of right, there is a way to manage those tempo changes with just some minor alteration to the song. Let's slow the intro down to 31 beats per minute from 37 and keep the rest of the song 93 as it is. Or you could make it 32 and 96, but I wouldn't go faster than that because then you will lose the overall feeling of the song. In any of these cases, it will mean the fast part will be exactly 3 times faster than intro and ending. And that in turn means that what is our triplets during the intro will become quarter notes, so the actual beat in the fast part. But what does it mean in practice? Okay, let me show you some pattern. First I will start with the beat. with the beat of the slow part, the intro. Now the triplets. Now I will hum those a little bit differently. What I play with the brush is actually triplet fourths. One interesting thing is, if you look at this picture here, one of those triplet fourths goes exactly together with beats 2 and 4. So if you, just like me, are used to metronome set on 2 and 4, that could provide you some additional help. But most importantly, those triplet fourths will become your 2 and 4, beats 2 and 4, once you speed up from the intro to the main part. And you can use that to jump straight into the right tempo. Bop Street, wa-ba-da-wam-tam-tam, while the cats and kittens all for Bop Street. Then, going all the way to the ending, the most important thing will be to master some confidence so that you can feel that pulsation of those triplet fourths without relying on any kind of humming, counting, etc. Bop Street, wa-ba-da-wam-pam-pam. Once you get that feeling, slowing down at the end becomes also a no-brainer. Jumping jacks so hard to beat, while the cats and kittens all for Bop Street. Bop Street, wa-ba-da-wam-tam-tam. Intro. It's all about noodling on G chord at 37 beats per minute. The most challenging here is probably not to forget what goes after what, so I'll try to give some hints on how to make it structured. First, it has this prominent lick with the bends. It has a bit of syncopation in the beginning. 1, 2, 3, ha! Here at this point we can start already figuring out the structure. First it has the bends, and then 2 times this thing. All the way from the start, and I will play it a bit farther. So after 2 times of this thing, we have 2 times of this. First time with the band, and the next time. And finally, there will be 2 times of Bop Street.
Bop Street, Bop Street. So while singing, it goes like this. And then the answering lick. It also has a bit of syncopation. Hop, Bop Street, and then. So the whole intro all together. 1, 2, 3. Ha. Bop Street. Ha. Bop Street. The first lick here is the same as in the intro, with a bit of variation. But then it deviates. And then the next lick. So all together from the start. Well, it's really easier to think about it as a whole rather than trying to break apart. And then we have one more line. Unfortunately, we have absolutely no shortcuts. It's just about playing it again and again until you memorize it. Maybe just some singing could help. Wah, wah, da, ba, wah, ba, da, wah, da, ba, wah, ba, da, wah, ba. So, it was the last line. Ha. And by the way, recently there was a question here in the comments if this last chord, imagine if you play it without G in the bass. So is it G6-9 or A6-9? Well, yes, if you play A in the bass, it would be surely A6-9. Especially if you also add F sharp on 4th string. But here in this song we are in the key of G and we have G in the bass, so it's G6-9. As you hear, it also sounds really different. Okay, thanks for tolerating this boring music theory stuff. Now let's play the whole ending. And that's it for today. Thank you for watching. And also it looks like end of December outside, so Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.